No problem.
Thank you. Yeah, I started recording. So the second part of the session, we are going to talk about data services, multi-user development environment, which comes the central repository into picture. And just to show you diagrammatically how and what a multi-user development environment is, I'm going back into the tutorial. If you see here, you have everything put in here as a diagram. So this is the central repository. So when one person is checked out, the other persons are only able to get the job. They cannot really check out. So what is mean by checkout and how we are getting this job? That is what we are going to see in a bit. But there will be always a question saying, can you run a job from central repository? The answer is no. Central repository is just kind of a library where you store things and maintain them. You cannot run a job from central repository, whether you do it from central management console or from designer, you cannot run a job. And the other question would be, can you log on to central repository? The answer is no. You cannot log on to central repository. Instead, you will be able to only connect to the central repository through a local repository or through central management console. So central repository, treat it as a library. No one owns it. There will be an administrator who will maintain it. Certainly there will be, but then there is no guarantee that a company will maintain an administrator for all this. Instead, they will ask one of them will have the administrator rights and they do it. But generally, no, it is not anyone's own play area. Local repository is your play area. Do whatever you want in local repository and use the central repository in a way that you can save your jobs. So currently I'm going to open the same job which we worked today. So I'm going to use the project Aura CDC. So after I am done with the job for today, I wanted to share this job to my friend or my colleague. We'll have to talk in terms of colleagues only, not friends. Because in office you will not have friends, you'll have colleagues, right? When it is a multi-user environment. So here what I wanted to do is, first thing is, if they don't have a central repository, the normal way is you can export it. While you export it, you have two options. When you click on export, you can always export it to any database. This situation came up in Ashok's project because they started the repository first in Oracle environment and later they wanted to migrate it to SQL Server. How do you migrate? Directly you can do it. Export the project, give the database username, password, credentials, and say export. It will just do it. For example, currently I have MySQL environment. I can make use of that because this particular job is built in. Okay, actually the repository is in MySQL. So let me use Oracle. I can certainly export everything into Oracle. The repository will be exported to Oracle. So all I need is a username and a password. So I have created, I remember one user called ODS with a password also called as ODS. I think so, if I am not wrong. Was that it is? Yes, I think so. Cannot connect to repository. See, I should have created a repository in that particular database, then I should be able to export it. But I haven't created a repository there. If I go and create a repository in Oracle environment, certainly I will be able to export it. This is a very important thing because never I know that people will migrate from one environment to another environment. Instead, I saw people migrating from a one version to other version. But the first time I heard, I was surprised, but maybe it happens that way. I was not aware. So I am trying to show you that first option. I mean, when you talk about central repository, you also have to understand a local repository can be migrated. So we are trying to do the same thing here. So while we are talking, I will quickly create one database instance, I mean, one repository instance from my data services repository manager. For now, I just wanted to run it really quick, so I'm not going to create one more schema. Instead, I will use my existing schema, which is ODS and the password is also ODS, I think. So I will create. If it creates, we are fine. We can export something into that and see if it works. So while that is happening, let me go back. While I wanted to export this, I have two ways, as I told. You can always do it into a database, or you can export it into an ATL file. That is the same thing we were doing so far, that I was exporting it into ATL file and I was sending it to you. You can also export it to XML. Why we need XML is, earlier when data quality is not as part of data integrator, it was from first logic, and there you cannot move jobs into ATL. You used to move only into an XML. So if you wanted to move an earlier job from data quality into this environment, or from this environment into a data quality environment separately, you better use the XML. So you have two options here. You can use any one of them. But if you are importing your job into a data quality, like the first logic as your tool, then you have to use it as XML, because I don't think they permit ATL in a data quality tool, that is first logic. So just that you are aware of it. So by this time, I think the repository should have been created. It is still working on it. So that is a very normal option. You can export it to ATL. But let us say if you are using an ATL, again you are going back to my hero's original story. He started his work in a slum, and he has one bag, he has everything in it. ATL is also a notepad file. You don't have anything that you can go and understand what is in it. Everything is dumped into it. All the objects, projects, the data flows, workflows, data stores, scripts, global variables, everything is at one place. A tool can understand it, but you cannot directly visibly see that until you again re-import it into an other repository. And the loss you may face there when you are trying to import into other repository, if there is an existing job in that repository and it uses the same name by chance, it will override it, and you don't have a backtrack of it. You will not see any history. So that is the reason you need central repository. That is one reason, just while you migrate the jobs. The second reason why you need central repository is, when there are multiple users developing in an environment, unless and until you follow a strict naming convention, someone else in the project can also come up with the same name. Like we have hundreds of people with the name Ganesh. In the same way, there can be hundreds of jobs that are named as CDC underscore initial. If people doesn't follow a proper naming convention document, there is always a chance that they step on each other's toe. At that time, even the central repository can save you your project. Instead of overwritten by someone else, you can actually say, okay, this project already exists in central repository, so I should always give a different name. So that is the one other purpose. And you have even more advantages of maintaining a central repository. You can do versioning in central repository, which will enable you to go back to any version at any point of time. That is one of the beautiful options of central repository. So I will show you all that in a bit. Just now I am trying to export my repository from MySQL environment to Oracle. That's what I am trying to do here. Let us see if we can achieve it. So earlier the connection failed. See now, I can export projects, jobs, workflows, data flows, tables, flat files, data stores, anything into a different repository. Now my repository was sitting in MySQL, and I am migrating myself into the Oracle repository. And these are the two data stores. It is asking whether you want it to migrate. Because it is Oracle, I can migrate, or I can right click and say you can ignore it. I mean, you can always. Okay, I think we can exclude it, but I'm just checking, guys. Okay, there is no option to exclude, but in an ATL file you do have the option to exclude. So the owner is system and ODS, and here the new owner. Okay, you can rename the owners. If you wanted to rename the owners, you can always do that. That is the option they are giving you. But the repository wise, it is going to be the same. You cannot do anything. So you can actually migrate everything. Like we have put a sample file there format. So it is asking new path that you wanted to migrate this one. If you don't give anything, it will put somewhere in the default path. So now everything, all the repository instances or the jobs that we have in this particular repository, only this particular project, you did not move all the repository, our entire repository. Only we tried to move certain project into a different repository. I moved it. In order to check whether we moved it properly or not, I'm going to exit from here and log on back into data services into my new repository instance, that is an Oracle. You'll see that it also is available in Oracle. Passwords, if I remember, it is ODS. It is ODS. I mean, just the name wise, I named it as ODS, guys, but don't get confused because I had only that schema which I created, and so I used it. So it need not be ODS. So if you see now, the job came out into the new repository here. This is how you can migrate a job into a repository from Oracle to MySQL, MySQL to SQL Server. That is all possible. Now we go back and actually understand the purpose of central repository, and you'll have to be active, guys. This is a very important thing. If you don't know about a transformation, certainly that is fine, you can go and learn about central repository. You'll be surely questioned in an interview because everyone are curious whether to implement central repository or not, because this is an optional component in data services. But for me, my preference is always implement central repository because it actually is advantageous than anything else. There are very few disadvantages of it, but they are very minor. So I'm trying to log on again back with my original account. Let me see if it works. Yeah, it worked. So I will be surprised to see if the central repository is now deactivated. If I need to activate again, I will do it. But certainly it is active. You see here, only one time I activated it and it stayed active. The reason is I have checked on remember password. When I say remember password, it automatically inputs the password and it gets activated. So now I'm going to export the same job into central repository, the job which we have built just now. So I say open. You are just for your visibility, but you need not open in the designer to export it. All you'll have to do is right click and say add to central repository. Objects and dependents with filtering, objects and dependents, objects. When you say objects, it will export only the so-called objects, workflows, data flows, and data any transformations, but it won't export data stored. So you will have to do an export with objects and dependents. I mean, add to central repository with objects and dependents is the best option that you need to exercise and add the job to the central repository. But let us also see what is the option of with filtering. When you say with filtering, it can give you certainly some options saying if you don't want it to export this data stores, or if you wanted to rename something, there is a little bit of options, I think. I think when you have filtering, actually you can filter out any objects you want to, or you can check only that particular object. That is what is the purpose I am thinking. Because I never tried to do with filtering, but then I am trying to show you that we have an option with filtering so that it includes the data stores also. But let me cancel this. I'm going to just check in, add the central repository objects and dependents and see what it is. So the comments, we have to make sure that you put some comment, guys, so that it is useful actually. This is a demo project for CDC op created on 10/2/2011. This is important. You put some comments. You will see how the comments also will help you, because the comments also reflect in your central repository. Now we go to the central repository. This is the central repository place where you can click and go there. And in the projects, if you go and see, you have the 3 jobs which you exported. And in the data stores, if you see, you have the 2 data stores which you exported. One important thing, if you wanted to go and see if there is anything different. I mean, we'll come back to that, guys. Sorry. History, because we have not exported anything, it doesn't make sense to look at the history. But now let us do a very simple thing. Now I have checked in the job. I have it in my central repository. Now I wanted to work on a particular data flow because on some day I got a new requirement. I wanted to change something in a data flow. I'm going to go into data flow, and in the query I'm going to make a very simple where class just for our understanding. Here I wanted to put the region is equal to 1. I don't know if there exists a region 1 or not. That is not the matter. I just wanted to say if I wanted to do this kind of an change, I can certainly do it locally. But how would anyone in the project know that I am working on this particular object? That is my question. How would you intimate? Are you going to drop an email saying, dear my colleagues, I am going to work on the data flow that is in this particular project, this is in this job, please do not work on it or please do not modify it. Are you going to intimate them? Because now it is in central repository, anyone can pick up the same data flow and start working on it. So the first thing as a best practice you need to do, go into this particular data flow. If you are working on a data flow, you can always check out at the data flow level, or there is no harm if you check out at the job level. What it means by checkout now we are going to see. Just before we do a checkout, I made a change here, right? I wanted to compare. Did I change something? Because I did not check out. Before making a checkout, I actually tried to modify something. So I'm going to do a comparison between my local and central to understand if I made any changes. So I will go to this particular data flow in which I know that I made a change here. I wanted to look at what is the version that is in central repository. So it is the df_cdc underscore dq. I right click and I say compare. It can compare with the objects and dependents in the central repository or just the object. So I will say just the object to the central repository. See, it gives you very detailed statistics. You have the central on the right hand side, you have the local on the left hand side. So it will certainly display you whatever the differences it finds. So if you see here, if there is some deletions, it will highlight in red. If there is something changed, it will highlight in blue. If something is inserted, it will certainly show you in green color. If something is consolidated, it will show here. So the differences it can point out with the color coding. So let us now go and see if there are any differences that I made at this particular point to this particular job. I just added a where class. So if you see here, there is something like a red indicator. You see here, it is saying the central doesn't have this dq sample region is equal to 1, which I added now. The right hand side, you don't have it in central. So it is showing you that there is a difference. The central doesn't have this. Hey, did someone ping me? I'm looking at some chat message. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So this is, it can show you a difference. Not only that, it can show you anything else that you have here. Reader log data conversion warning is equal to yes. Reader log row format warning is equal to yes. So you have some conversion errors on the left hand side. It is trying to show you the properties also here. Right hand side you don't have that. So you can actually use that compare option and you can find out if there is anything that you changed. That is one option. You can do it at a job level or a project level, that is fine. But the important thing is, if I would have followed a certain rule that I checked out this particular job or data flow before I touch, it should be actually good for me to work with it. Because my colleagues know that I am working on this particular data flow. Now, I have two options while I check out even. I can check out objects without replacement, or I can do a checkout and of objects and dependents with replacement. Was there a question, guys? I heard some a little bit of thing, but it was cracking. You were breaking up actually. Was there any question?
No, I'm having some issue with my phone. That's what it is.
Okay.
Losing connection.
Okay. So while you wanted to do a checkout, it is very important whether you do a checkout with replacement or without replacement. When you say without replacement, it will not override your local code. It will still keep it safe. For let us say for now, I wanted to do it without replacement. The first thing I am doing. So objects and dependents without replacement is the option I am taking. So I click on that. This operation will not include data store. To include data store, use checkout with filtering. Do you want to continue? I don't want it to check out the data stores. Let them be there. So I click on yes. Now the objects and everything under it is being got into my local repository, but still nothing has replaced my own data flow whichever I worked here. If you go and see here, this is in checked out status, but still you will not see any changes that has happened because certainly we have put an where class here that was not in the central repository, but still it did not override. So let me do it checkout with replacement and see what will happen, just to show you the difference, because that is where people get confused. So I'm trying to show you again, and I mean in a very clear fashion here. So I go back
It's
and
similar to
say,
how we do
what is it?
it's similar to how we do the SharePoint. Like that's how we check out trying to make some
Exactly.
change.
You have a lot of tools like this. You have version control system, like you have a source safe VSS. You do have some rational tools that can do this, like the clear case. Clear case can also do the same check-in checkout. But people who has not worked with those kind of tools will have a little confusion, and so I'm trying to show you. It is the same concept. So I'm doing an undo checkout objects and dependents because I did a checkout without replacement. It did not override. If I do a checkout with objects and replace, I mean, first I need to do an undo so that we have reverted the process what we did. Now I'm going to right click and say checkout objects and dependents. I'm not using the option without replacement. So when I use this checkout directly, it is going to override my local code. Now you will be surprised to see that something jumped from central repository that has changed your code. Let me show you that particular data flow which we were working on. We added a where class, but no more you'll see the where class because the code is overwritten with whatever was in central repository. So this is the same where class, I mean same job which we worked on. And if you go and see, there is no where class because your central repository code is being imported and it overwrites the local repository code. So make sure always you use checkout without replacement if you doubt that you have made any changes to the local repository job. So right now I did a checkout. Now I'm going to again make some changes here. So I certainly wanted to do in a right format. So I checked it out. Now it is a right time that I got a new requirement. They asked me to add a business rule saying extract only for region 1. Don't do it for everything. So I have made the change. Now I wanted to check back this entire job again because I completed making my changes. So I right click and say you don't have add to repository anymore because you already added it to repository. So I will say right click and say where is it? Repository export to file. No, that's not what I want. I wanted to not even comparison. Okay, you can't do it from here. All you'll have to do is you have to go into central repository, and again here I think you have a check-in option. See here, check-in objects and dependents. If you click on check-in objects and dependents, certainly it will show you the following objects cannot be checked in because there are no changes that happen to this particular things. So there is no requirement of checking in all that. It will check in only or it will change only that object which is got changed. So it will change only the data flow which is changed, but let us put a comment here. This data flow is updated. Region filter is added. I have put a comment and now I apply it. Now we have successfully checked in back. If you go and look at the data flows now, you can actually retrieve the history of it. If you right click and say show history, see it is showing version 1, version 2, and the repository is MySQL and so. Because the repository did not change, it is not giving you one more time the repository information, but in general it will give. If you see the comment, this is useful for you because the data flow is updated, region filter is added. Earlier is this is a demo project for CDC operation created on so and so date. You have these comments. And next time when you wanted to retrieve, let us say you have updated certainly many times and you have like 10 different versions sitting here. You can obviously get a particular data flow by version. If you right click and say get latest, it will get you only the recent version. But if you go and say get by label, object and dependents, it can get you the earlier version. So I'm saying get object only. So the object label is, I think I did not label it, but let me try the version 1. Invalid label because I did not label it. But then I can certainly get based on a version, I think. One second. The first thing is I think I need to label it. Only then I can get that way. But object version is created as 1 and 2, but you don't have a label. If I put a label there, certainly I can get it. So get by version. So let me see. Now I have got the original version of it, not the current one. So which means my local is replaced now. If you go and check here, your local repository, whatever the job you have, the changes you made are gone because you bought the previous version again. You realized you want to revert something, so you bought the previous version. You don't have the where class. It is gone. But is it gone forever? No. You can certainly go back here and say, get it again the version which you want. Label the latest version is a different option. Get by label objects, and it will show you this option. But I did not label it, so I'm sorry. Again, I'm going into the same labeling. But if you ask for show history, it is showing you history. You can select any version you want. Now I selected version 2 and say get object by version. Now it got me that where it had all the changes that I made. So if I go here, you will see that I am maintaining both the versions here. I can compare between these two versions. That is also permitted, I think. So let us also test that out. But you have certainly more options here. So I'm going to check if at all I have the where class. I have the where class now because I was able to get whichever version I want. Now, if I don't want it to import anything, but I still wanted to check between two versions, is it that possible? Let me check that because I never even tried that. I know that we can compare between two versions between central and local, but I will be surprised to see if I have that option to compare between these two. Certainly I don't think you can compare here itself, so I will try object 2. So it is not giving me an option. No, it doesn't give me an option. I mean, I cannot compare the same thing to same thing, but you can compare this one to the local or this one to any other object if you have a similar object. But as I did not have any similar object, I don't have that. But if you want to compare between version 1 and version 2, certainly you can compare. You take the latest version in in local and you compare it with central, it will give you that. So you have more than one options that you can do, compare and exchange it. And if your friend wants or if your colleague wants to work on certain data flow, because there came up a production issue, you are asked to work on one problem and he's doing another problem. How do you do that? So you have to ask him to check out his object at the data flow level. And he will go and check out his object, get the latest objects with replacement actually, because it will override the existing. So I will say objects and dependents so that it replaces my local, and the same thing can be performed in other repository that someone else can check out this. But if someone else try to go and get this particular version, it will not allow you. You can get that particular data flow, but it will not allow you to check out from a different user. If someone else try this, it will say this is already checked out by a user called tutorial and you cannot do it. So that is the option here. That is one of the good things. And to give you more options, to show you more options in data services in central repository, you do have something called grouping. You can certainly create a group in your central management console. In the central management console, if you create a group, a person can be restricted only to get the job, but he will not be able to export his jobs or modify any of the existing jobs. So I'm going to central management console and I will show you where you can set an user. So if you go into administrator, you have the central repository and you have the groups. So I can certainly add here one more group. I will say read only. I mean just that I know these are, or else I can say it as developers group. So I will just apply. Now I can actually set up permissions for this particular group which I have created, or I can add certain users under this group. Currently I have tutorial user. I wanted to actually take him off from this group and add him into the developer group which I created, and I want to restrict access to him. Let me do that now. So it is under DI users. I will remove this user and say apply. Cannot remove user tutorial from group because it is the default group for user tutorial. So that was my default group, so it is not allowing me to remove. What can I do here? So I have the developers group. So certainly let me try this out. I will add this him here and I will apply. So this particular person now belongs to the developer group. If I have more users, actually I should have put him under the developer group and can restrict actually. How to restrict this particular new group or user I have created? I can certainly set him up some rights. So if you go into users, what kind of rights? It is not here. I think you have to go. Yeah, I'm sorry guys. You have to go into user management. You can actually restrict anyone here. So this particular guy, tutorial, is a profiler, multi-user administrator, and this clouds is actually profiler administrator, and admin is admin, normal admin. So if I create one more user, if you log in as this particular user, you will be restricted. I have created a new repository recently, right, which is my Oracle repository. If I wanted to try, I can certainly try on that particular repository, add him up and assign him into a group where he has only minimal permissions. So the essence of telling you all this is you can maintain 2 groups or 3 groups in your environment. One group will be administrators, they have full access. The second group will be only developers, they have very limited access, that they can only do certain you can restrict them to certain projects. That is also possible. Because central repository in an organization, it is going to be only one central repository. So you don't want everyone to peep onto the same central repository, override someone else's jobs, or work on someone else's jobs. At the project level, you can set some restrictions saying, okay, you can modify this particular user group can access only this particular project. The for rest of them, you'll restrict saying you don't have rights to access everything. So here, if I set a role as operator, monitor, then he has no way that he could do anything. So let me say apply. So now my tutorial, whatever I have logged in, the display name was TUT, and if you go and now see there, okay, this is the profiler repository. I'm sorry. If it is a profiler repository, I don't have anything to do there. Clouds is profiler administrator. Let me try to modify this guy. I will put him as monitor. But still, the repository is a profiler repository. Let me quickly add one more repository. Username is ODS, password is ODS, and ODS. Display name is ODS. A role is monitor. I will say apply. So I have added a new user here, and certainly I can add his repository here. Add the repository. It was repository name is ODS, and it is Oracle, and mission name is, I think, localhost, or it could be my PC. Service name, I think, is training. That's what I vaguely remember. Username, I think it was what was I using? You have to create and you have to add that repository whatever you created. But something I have given wrong. It is not allowing me. When I create something very quick, I did not remember all the users and passwords and everything. So it is not allowing me there. But if you wanted to try it out at your end, even that is possible, guys, because it will automatically do that. It is only we'll have to remember the usernames and passwords. So it is unable to connect to this repository. So I'm not going to trouble it too much. But what I'm saying is certainly you can create some user groups. When you create some user groups, now if I log in back, I should see a new user group. I think if it got refreshed when I connect now, I should see a new group here. I don't see. I can always refresh clicking on this button. I should see a new group. See here, developer group. So he has only read-only permissions now. So this developer group, if you are assigned to a developer group, if particular user is assigned to a developer group, if you right click, he doesn't have the option of checkout. All he can do is only get the latest version. When I say get the latest version, only you are reading the code. You don't have opportunity to work on it or check in back. So you can keep certain people that they can view others' code, but they cannot modify their code. So that someone can come back and say, no, this is not what I did. It is someone else has modified. You have the track of it. You have everything that you can track. So that is the reason I have created one developer group, which I have given permissions as monitor, and so it shows as read only. So if you are logged in as developer group, if you are assigned to developer group, then you cannot do anything. You can only read them. So that is one restriction. The last one thing I wanted to show you is labeling. Let us say I have reached certainly a project ending where we are savvy with whatever the model we have developed. The job is moved into QA and it is working fine. Then I can finally go and label it. How to label it? You can you can actually go and create a label here. One second, I suddenly dropped out from my mind. I don't remember where I was labeling it. So here, permissions no, dependence no. I think when I try to check in, I can label it or uh, okay. Let me see the history. How am I going to label? I forget actually. Uh, so let me try to check in. I should be able to give a label to it saying version 1.1 and next time I can get the same version. So I don't actually remember how I used to label it. Um, certainly I should be able to label it, guys. One second. I'm doing a checkout objects and dependents. Say yes. So the object is already checked out by current repository user. It is showing because I have checked it out from on a different job, so it's telling me that. But that's okay. Whatever it gives me. Ah, I should see an option to label it. I'm surprised if I don't see the option. Hey, recently you were working on this, right, Ashok? By chance, if you remember where we were, how we do this labeling, you can help me actually. Somehow I lost that particular thing from my mind. I don't remember how I was doing it. While I check in back, I think I can certainly put a label. Let me now check in back the code. So when I now right click on the project and say check in objects and dependents with filtering, I can, where is the option? Why is it not giving me an option to label it? Oh, ah, why can't I? Um,
Looking
yeah,
for a get label version.
no.
Uh,
In order to get label version, you have to put a label. So, but let me try it out. Get by label. So I have to put a label there. Only then I can get by that, right? So I mean,
yeah, that's right.
we have somewhere some option that it should be enabled. I think so. I don't remember properly, but we can certainly go into tutorial or anywhere we should be able to find it. But I mean, I I I I showed it in the earlier demo even, so I should be able to find it. Suddenly, I don't get that in my mind where I was doing a label. Hmm. How was I labeling the project? I had some option, guys. Okay, let me not waste time. There is nothing wrong. Every one of us are Gajnis sometime, so it is better I search it. So you can certainly label a job. So I am trying to look at the labeling option. It is not any complex option actually. It is a very simple thing that you go and right click and label it. It is very simple. But somehow it slipped out of my mind. How I used to label it, I don't remember now. Oh, I have to read through entire this and do it to label an object and its dependence. Right click on the object you want, label latest version object. Okay. It is very simple. It should not be anything complex. So it should be here only. Okay, is it not going to accept at the project level? That could be the one. I don't see the option, guys. Why? I don't know. So open the central object library, right click on the object you want it to label and choose label latest version. Why my central is not giving me that option, I don't understand. That's what I was trying to do all the time, right? So if I go here and right click,
Yes, label latest version. You missed it under the history. Not that
man,
one.
how many times have we right clicked here, but I did not see that,
Yeah, I saw it. You were looking for that one. That's why I didn't tell you.
I'm sorry, man. It is very simple. Like I did it earlier many times, but I was wondering why could not I do it now. So after a project is perfect, after the testing phase is over, you can say version 1. Next time when you wanted to uh, get that project and do anything in it, you can certainly get it by label. Now because I labeled it, I can say show history. uh, it does not show anything for it because did I do it at the project level, or yeah, I did it at the project level. So if I go into the job, certainly I will have a labeling. A label did not appear, but when you, I think, export the job again, it will get a label now. So let me again do one simple thing here. For me to do that, I need to add objects and dependents of a different project and no, what am I doing? So I have to get it by label. Then if I certainly labeled it, I can always retrieve it by label. Now because I labeled it with a name, so I will say get by label, objects and dependents. If I say version 1.0, it can certainly get me. So it says currently invalid label, but we labeled it properly, I think so. Let me do it again. I will say 1.0. No, I don't put even anything else. So I think if I refresh, it will get that versioning. So whatever the options I am showing, that would be the last option I would like to show on central repository, and then I will give you a chance for more questions. And as Syed want me to show something on the profiler, I will quickly show you. Data services is again like killing me. It logged off abruptly. When it log off abruptly, we'll have to again reset the user and see if it worked or not. Sometimes it can be memory issues that we don't have a certain memory that is being required because we are running too many things on here. So now I have labeled one of the jobs. Let me go and see if it got labeled in the same way I want it to be. So show history. Somehow it is not getting that label. but then certainly that is the way you can label, and you can go and get that particular job with the label you have given. It is somehow not showing the label, but surely if it saves properly, it has to get us that particular objects or anything based on a label. So I tried to simulate the situation and show you, but still it is not giving me an option like that. Okay, let me do it at the object level and see if it works. And if I wanted to show history, yes, it worked. So what I did is I did it at the data flow level, but earlier even I did not do one small thing there. Let me do it now. Objects and dependents 1.0. Okay. So earlier it did not allow me, but now it is allowing me. So two dot zero. So now I labeled it. So if now I go and look at the history, it will certainly show you. And next time when I wanted to get this particular project by label, I can certainly get, okay, this is the version I wanted to get. Let me give the version number. It will get you that version. So labeling is always good. You can label it the whatever the version you feel is the most latest. You can label that, and finally when you pull out, it need not be at the project level. It can certainly pull label 1 from first job, and version 2 from second job, and version 5 from third job if you have named it properly with all of them as your latest versions. That is always possible. It can mix and match them. So by what I mean is, if let us say at the project level or at this particular data flow level, let me show you history. It has a label 2. So if you go and check other workflows even, you would certainly see the same thing. These are all labeled as 2. But let us say, for example, I wanted to get a label 2 object at data flow level, but whereas a label 3 at a workflow level. I can always do that. For example, let me go and say as 3.0. So now I have this workflow as 3.0, and I will name this data flow as also 3.0. So now if I wanted to retrieve by a version, when I do that, I will get that two different data flows. It will read the, it can give me the combination of them. So that's what I am trying to show here. Invalid label. I doubt which one I tried to put the version 3. So let me check again. Oh, the 3 doesn't go in, but I think you will be able to understand. It is not that trickier, and if you look at even the tutorial, you will certainly understand. Not the tutorial actually, you will not have versioning in tutorial. Instead, you will have it here. So because I wanted to jump on to the other part, which is profiling, which Syed wanted me to show him. So now I switch the gears. Before I switch the gears, do you have any questions on this particular thing, guys? Whatever so far we saw, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. So because I have disabled him the profiling option, I cannot profile on this particular user. So I have to go and change him to a different role, so that I can allow him to profile. So here I will say at profiler administrator and say apply, and just that I made some change here. If you see here now, it is not active. It is the login activity failed. That's what it shows. The profiler is running, but earlier I think I changed some permissions and so it did not allow me now. I don't know what all I changed. That is my problem now. But anyhow, I will try to I will try to put whatever the password I remember and see if it works. Okay. Without having this profiler, I don't think if I run a job it is going to be successful. Let me look at what did I do that mischievous that it is killing me now. So I think I went into repositories wherein this repository is already added. That is fine. In the central repositories and profile repositories, did I make any changes? I think I have made something in here. Users and groups. Tutorial is active. This guy is active, but not a member of BI. So we are good here. Due to some reason, my tutorial, my login, it failed. Let me. Let me try this. Okay, we made it. Why is it still showing as login failed? Okay, now it is connected. So just to answer whatever the doubts or questions you had on profiling, let me take a simple job here and I will try to show you what all the profiling that we'll see here. And we can always go and change in the central management console that you want more profiling or data sampling, however you want it to do, it can do that. So if you go into a job, before you build any job, if you wanted to profile, first view the data. After you view the data, you click on this profile tab. When you click on profile tab, it can profile all these characteristics of the data. Currently it did not. Why? Uh, Now it will profile. Earlier, because those objects were not checked by us, I think it did not profile. Now it started profiling. So you are looking at it in a hanging mode. But while it is doing that profiling, let me go and show you here what are the profiler repository configuration that we have. Where do I set the profiler options? Is if I remember correctly here, the profiler configuration. Profiling size, always it will take all the rows that it has. Sampling rows, it will display you only 10 rows as a sample. Number of distinct values, it is going to save only the first 100 distinct values. It will not show you everything. So you can certainly say if you want it to increase it, it can increase. Number of rows per commit, because this is data store dependent, it is showing that 5000 as the limit because I updated it to 5000. And if you see degree of parallelism, it has 2 because I updated it somewhere that it should have a degree of parallelism 2. If you see the task management maximum concurrent task, it can run only 10 tasks. If you wanted to make it more, yes, certainly it can do it, but then you'll have to increase the memory, you'll have to increase more RAM onto it, and you have to increase the CPUs and everything. So these are like basic things where you can go and profile. You don't have too many things here. It is a very simple profiling task that it can give a minimum and a maximum of a field by length, by median. If it is anything like a measure, it can give you an average. it can give you the character length, and it can give you the maximum to minimum character or whatever it is. So you can do a little bit of profiling here. That's what I meant. Like, you cannot certainly do a lot of profiling that is required by a data or a business analyst. I'm going to actually stop recording, but I will show you information stewards, which is a different company's proprietary information. So I cannot record and display it. But this profiling we can do in a very efficient manner when you actually go on to information stewards. So let me stop recording, and I will log